What's with people who think they're king or queen of the castle? Like they're totally untouchable. Well, today on rLounge, let's knock those crowns off. Up first, the toll troll. You only pay mileage for the shortest possible trip? Okay, then you have to pay my tolls. At my job, every day I have to travel between two offices. I start at my main office, then I have to travel to the second office, then back to my main office. Because I'm using my personal vehicle for this travel, the company pays me mileage. Well, there are basically two routes you can take between the two offices. One is about a mile round trip shorter, but has tolls. So I always took the 1 mile longer route and avoid the tolls. I did it this way for a year. Well, in comes the new bookkeeper, and she is hell-bent on saving the company money. And where does she think all this wasteful money is going? Expense reports, obviously. So she starts nitpicking every report. Like, if someone is out and has to buy some pens for work, she goes online and finds the cheapest price possible for those pens and only reimburses for that cheaper price. It, obviously, has pissed several people off. Well, she eventually decided to target me. I submit my report for 2 weeks, and a few days later get the reimbursement payment. Well, it's $5.85 short. I ask her about it, and she says I've been ripping off the company for the past year by taking the longer route between the offices. She will only pay mileage for the shorter route from now on. And I'm lucky she doesn't go back and take back all the extra from the past year. I say, okay, but to please send me that, per her, I must take the shorter route and that this is company policy and leave her office. Before I even made it to my desk, I had the email from her confirming what she said. 2 weeks later, I submit my expense report. I reported the shorter route, so the company saved $5.85, but tolls added up to $136, a net loss for the company of $130.15. It's been 6 months, and I'm still taking the shorter route, costing the company an extra $130.15 every 2 weeks. Let's see what the community thinks. My boss thinks I'm working says, if they ask you to change to your former route, please make sure you demand you will only do it after they reimburse you for the $5.85 they stole from you. Tell them I said hi claims, as someone who travels for work, dear Lord, this is beautiful. There are few things more annoying than someone who never travels going line by line looking to save 20 cents so they can write themselves up for an award. PM me your nipples wants to say, I once had to justify the concept of traffic to an accountant. At that company, we weren't allowed to make our own travel plans. The travel department picked the cheapest flight that vaguely fit the requested schedule. One time, I was running late leaving the office, so I took a toll highway instead of the normal route to the airport because there was much less traffic. The 407 instead of the 403 in the Toronto area, if you're familiar. After I filed the expense report, on paper of course because Expensify costs too much, I got an email from someone I had never heard from before. Why are there tolls? Those are very expensive. You should have taken the other route. Also, why did you have to park a car if you were going home? Well, I was booked by the travel department on the last flight of the night. I was running late and saw that there was a lot of traffic on the normal route. I figured that a $45 toll would be cheaper than a new flight. Please see the attached email from this person's boss, confirming that I could park a company car for the weekend because it was cheaper than a taxi both ways. After several days, okay, fine, but don't do it again. Also in the future, please use this website to get a coupon for the airport parking garage because you went over on that too. This chick just seems like she loves the power trip she gets. Disgusting. Update. This extra cost to the company went on all last year. By my estimates, it cost the company about an extra $3,500 last year. So the third week of December, we have our annual budget review with all the department heads. It's usually just a quick chit-chat about how things went over the year. Then we all get a nice catered lunch. This year went a little different. First, Karen Bookkeeper asked that we have a projector set up in the conference room so she could give a presentation on how much she has saved the company since she was hired at the beginning of the year. This was great for me. I prepared my own presentation. She starts off the meeting going over each department, going over the changes she has made to save money. Her big cherry on top of her savings was how much she saved by cracking down on excess expense reimbursements. Now, I should say here that she is not liked by any of the department heads. Most of the employees have complained to their department heads about her bull, and they've been forced to just take the complaints with no power to do anything about it. I, on the other hand, am a one-person department. So, her presentation ends with a big hooray on how cutting down on expense reimbursements has saved the company a whole $3,500 last year. Then we start going over each department's budgets. Everything is going normally until they get to my budget. Wait, why is it so far over budget? My boss asks. and this is when my short PowerPoint gets played. I bring up the first slide. It's the slightly longer route I was taking between offices. I explained this was the route I was taking and what the mileage reimbursement was. The next slide has the new shorter route. I explained that Karen forced me to take this route because the mileage reimbursement was less, saving the company about $5.85 every 2 weeks, a little more after the mileage rate went up in July. Then I showed them the next slide of Karen's email. Included in that email is a part about this being final, and there will be no further discussion on the matter. The final slide was all the toll reimbursements I was paid over the year, including the approximate total year to date that was a result of this new shorter route. I explained that had I been able to discuss the matter with Karen, I could have explained that the shorter route had these extra tolls, and I said that's the reason I'm so over budget this year. The room was silent for what seems like forever. Then the owners of the company asked everyone except Karen to step out of the room for a few minutes. When the door opened back up, Karen walked out silent, went to her desk, and started packing up her things. That was the end of Karen. Let's see how the community reacted. Opportunity Salty 7087 chimes in first. Had something similar. Claimed $11 for the cell phone usage back when I was still being charged for minutes over my plan. Got rejected and hit with familiarize yourself with the policy to find they would only reimburse for minutes I used for company business after I had exceeded my plan. Corrected the expense report. Also found I was underclaiming mileage that I then corrected for the following 3+ years and thousands of dollars per year that I never would have known about if I hadn't familiarized myself with the policy. Thanks, Pete. Travel and expense policy is something I memorized with each subsequent organization. Do not go afoul of the bean counters. Ranos131 says, Ha! So her being a complete witch to everyone saved a whopping $3,500 and she thought that was an accomplishment? What was the look on her face when you dropped that $6,500 bomb on her? Night Otter chimes in, when you put someone in charge of cracking down on expenses, you expect them to save real money. Even at a small company, $3,500 is peanuts. Cracking down means hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. I worked at a company that had an expenses crackdown. Travel, do your diligence, plan ahead, book early at the cheapest rate you could find. This was the early 2000s. Silicon Valley to Silicon Gulch, San Jose to Boston. Flights in advance were less than $150, 8 weeks in advance. I put in my travel request for approval. No response. 6 weeks in advance, I put my travel request in for approval. CC next level. No response. I had been invited to attend a customer-facing meeting. Many of our biggest customers. I was the lead technical support person for an entire product line. 4 weeks in advance. Price is now approximately $300. Put in my travel request for approval. To next level. CC original approval and skip level. No response. 3 weeks. Now $450. To skip level. CC yada yada. CC event organizer who invited me. 2 weeks. Event organizer has sent me itinerary. I'm on 2 panel discussions and fully booked for one-on-one with customers. Ask event organizer, what is up with approvals? It's the whole saving money thing. Send in travel request. CCing senior directors and event organizer's boss. 1 week. Flight now $1,200, yada yada yada. Email most of the event staff. Travel is still unapproved. Customers who just received itinerary are emailing questions and topics they want to discuss in one-on-one sessions. Should I start responding, sorry, due to the events out of my control, I will not be attending? Boom. Next morning, approved by a VP and travel office, has my flight and hotel booked. My tickets are being overnighted to my office. Event was great. I learned a lot, answered countless questions, redesigned one customer's system, fixed 2 others, and cleared a bunch of issues. 2 weeks later, I am randomly selected for the quarterly lunch with an exec. 12 non-managers have lunch with an executive so they can learn what's happening in the trenches. Who did we get? The CFO. Oh my. As he went around the table asking folks to bring up issues, I said, you want to save me for last. A few folks who knew me in the above laughed. I wrapped up the story with, for $1,200, I could have flown first class on this trip and for my next trade show trip. To say he wasn't happy was an understatement. Several folks told me later that I should have asked for the first class travel. Even if I had thought of it, I'm sure he would have blown a gasket. Hell yeah. Let Karen go be frugal somewhere else. What an absolute disaster. It's hilarious how she literally thought she was doing the company a service and felt like the big wolf on campus. Eye roll. I'm so glad you asked for a paper trail and covered your butt. Rather than just being a decent human being and actually going after her job, she made herself hated. People don't normally go out of their way to cost the business money. Usually, if they're asking for reimbursements, it's genuine. She placed targets on people's backs for fun. Her attention could have been placed elsewhere. where it really mattered. Do you have a similar story? Let us know below. Next, Daddy's little credit card princess. Karen told me to hang up, so I did. So I work for a large electronics company doing sales over the phone. We get a lot of calls daily and take credit card details to place orders, as well as place finance orders. Since fraud is such a big deal in our company, we're taught that only the account holder for the credit card or finance account can place an order. Cue Karen calling to place an order for finance. Go through everything, get her name, address, number, and payment details. Just before I place the order, she goes, "Oh, the card's in my dad's name. That's fine, right?" I tell her no, her dad needs to place the order as he's the account holder. Cue her arguing for about 5 minutes, how she's his daughter and I need to finalize this order now. I tell her, "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. As I've mentioned, the account holder needs to place the order." She started cussing me out, calls me a stupid effing idiot and that I know nothing, and demands I place the order. I've had enough at this point. Since she started swearing and getting aggressive, I said, "I'm sorry, but if you continue to speak to me in such a manner, I will terminate this call." Customer says, "Well, terminate it then." So I did with a, "Okay, thank you for calling. Have a nice day." I heard her go, "No, wait," as I hung up on her. God, that felt good. Cybermalls starts off the community comments. "Do you know who I am?" "Nope, and I'm not paid enough to care. Goodbye." Click. Darth Gay Agenda says, "If you get lucky, they might pull the recording for use in a training exercise on how to deal with abusive customers." The OP replies, "That's a possibility, but I'm known as the troublemaker at my work. I question everything and call my team lead out on the BS our company tried to feed us. Most likely someone will try to use it to get me in trouble." Piper Dune in Oregon says, "When my son worked in a call center, if someone got abusive, he'd remind them that this call is being monitored. Then remind them that they've identified themselves at the start of the call. It usually worked." Noob9 chimes in, "Yeah, understandable, but I think that I'm too polite at the call. A few years ago, my ISP effed something up and my internet stopped working. After a day, I called and was polite and they said they'd forward it to the tech team. A week later, I called again. Same answer, forwarded to the tech team. About 2 weeks later, I've written a letter that I will terminate the contract extraordinary. I think immediately it was supposed to be used there, if they do not get it working again. 3 weeks later, I terminated the contract and wanted to make a new at another company. 4 weeks later, other company called me and said they cannot proceed because my port is blocked by another ISP. They have to free it first. Call the old ISP, as always polite, because the call center guy is not the one who effed up. Guess what? They forwarded it to the tech team. 6 weeks later, I went to a lawyer. They somehow managed to get my port freed, had to pay around $400. Then ISP called and said sorry, and they will gift me 2 or 3 months if I will keep them as my ISP. I said no and was still polite. I wonder if I could get a better solution when I would have yelled and asked for their manager at the second phone call. The Goob TM wants to contribute to the conversation. When my wife and I were getting internet hooked up, it was in her name, and the representative said even though we're married, he can't do anything through me. So I said, okay, let me get her. Waited a moment, then spoke in a high voice. Hello, this is wife. Gave her all the details to verify, then said I'd like to add hubby to account. Then gave the phone back to myself. Where do people literally get off? It's really not hard to just be a good person. And yeah, you shouldn't be spoken to that way. No way in hell. If she can't respect you, then yeah, this conversation is over. What do you make of this? Thank you for joining us today on rLounge. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to say regarding today's content, share that with us in the comments below.